Good evening, everyone. I'm really excited and grateful to be here. I was reflecting a bit this morning that the last time I got up in front of a bunch of people to talk about the field school, I essentially cried the entire time. I was doing a good Jeremy Mann impression, but I'm hopeful that tonight I can get through all of this and really help you see why. Why I love this school so much, why I'm so grateful for it, and why I would encourage you to be involved and to participate in the amazing things that this school is doing. So there's two things about me that I want to share up front to kind of get you to understand kind of who I am and why this school means so much to me. The first is something that was kind of already shared. I have 4 kids, so I don't have as many as Cortland. Actually, when I met Cortland, last year, our family was tied for the most kids at the school. Then the Armstrongs came, and not only did they beat us, but they've got like reserves that are coming through. So I was like, come on. So we have 4 kids, all of whom are at the field school, and all of whom absolutely love the field school. We actually got back from vacation a couple weeks ago, and all of the kids were so excited to go to school the next day. And I'm like, I never, ever thought that growing up, that I'm so glad I got back so I can go to school. They love it. And they love it in part because they are loved by the people that are there, by their friends, and by their teachers and the administration and everyone who's part of the community. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that I am a pastor. And I'm a pastor who is deeply, deeply passionate about training and caring for my people to understand that as Christians, we are called to actually take care of this world. We're not called to escape it. We're actually saved to be thrown, to be thrust back into it. So a lot of times in churches or in Christian circles, we can come to think of the point of Christianity to be spiritual, to be merely spiritual or entirely spiritual, that we are forgiven of our sins and our souls are saved. And of course, there's a lot of truth to that. But the story that the Bible tells begins with God making humans in his image for the sake of the world. We are made to look like God and to love God by actually loving one another and loving this world, by taking care of it, to actually live outside of ourselves for the sake of the other. But of course, we refused. We did what theologians often call curving in on ourselves. We did the very opposite of what we were called to do, and we've continued to do that. In many ways, our societies are built in that kind of way, to protect ourselves, to actually protect us from that which would scare us, to make sure that we are okay. But in response to this rejection, God actually did the opposite. He did what we were called to do. We were meant to imitate him, and so he actually was himself by living for us. And so he sent his son, Jesus, so that we could be forgiven. But we have to think about that. What does it mean to be forgiven? It means to actually be repurposed then for the world. To be saved not just from something, but for something. To live for God, to love God by loving others and taking care of this world. You see, that's part of the reason why I love and am so grateful that I've had the opportunity to be just part of this school. Because the field school is truly seeking to do this in Austin and on the west side of Chicago. Not just to care for Christians. You don't have to be a Christian to go to the school. And the school does not exist to try to help Christians escape from the problems of the world. The school exists for Austin. It exists for the west side of Chicago. It is intentionally where it is, a place where few people want to go. Few people want to live there. Few people want to invest there. But it is there because these kids are worth it. These families are worth it. These neighborhoods are worth it. It is where it is because the field school is seeking to take responsibility for caring for this world that God loves, that he sent his son to save. It's actually because of this that the school is having a very, very, very interesting impact on the neighborhood. Okay, so here's a map of, now I know that you're like, what is that? This is a map of the enrollment of the school, okay? and where that massive concentration of dots is, that's Austin. Okay, so the highest concentration of students, where do they mostly come from? They come from Austin. They come from the west side of Chicago. So in many ways, it's having an impact by just caring for the people that are there. But it's also fascinating to think of the fact that there are people that are commuting to go to the school. There are people who commute to go to the field school from the suburbs. And I want you to think about that. If you know Chicago, think about that for a second. There are people commuting out of the suburbs. They go to Oak Park and pay way higher taxes. And they commute out of it to come to Austin. We're not taking people out of Austin. We're actually bringing people to it. We want to be part of this community. People are coming because they want to invest here because that's the impact this school is actually having. In fact, one of the crazy things that's happening is it's not just people that are commuting. There are many families who are moving to the west side of Chicago, who are moving to Austin because they want their kids there. They want their families involved in these kind of things. They want to get to know their neighbors because that's what the school is teaching. They want to be part of the school. They want to be part of this community. And I know that can sound alarming in many ways because it can raise questions concerning gentrification. But gentrification is truly only a problem not when people move into a neighborhood, but when in doing so they displace others. Okay, so listen to this quote from the great social activist John Perkins. Perkins says this, I think you'll see the quote up here, yeah. When we relocate, we work to develop and invest in our communities without displacing our neighbors. We work for and share the benefits of the community with our neighbors. Relocation transforms you, them, and theirs to we, us, and ours. Relocation in many ways actually helps us curve out of ourselves to participate in others. See, what Perkins is highlighting here is that there is a way to move into these neighborhoods that's not destructive. It's when you move there to invest, to be part of the community, and that is what the field school is not just doing itself, but it's drawing others in to do as well. Something that is kind of shocking to know in Chicago, which means that this school is not only caring for the community through being a school, it's drawing more and more people here who are coming to do the same, to care for the families here and to invest here. And that's exactly what the field school actually did for me and for my family. You see, I love this school, not just because it's this awesome thing that I get to participate in, but because of what it has done for me, how it has cared for me and my family. So here's a picture of my family. As I mentioned, we have 4 kids. My wife is also wonderful. Cortland was talking about how my wife is amazing too. I gotta hype her up, right? As I mentioned, we have 4 kids. But we have 4 kids who have had very, very different experiences in their early years. So each of my kids was born in Chicago. But 2 of them were born into shockingly painful and hard situations. And when they joined our family, my wife and I were absolutely overwhelmed. I learned very quickly when these amazing kids came into our family that love is inherently substitutionary. If you love someone, you have to take their pain on yourself. I knew how to do that with my biological kids, but they had had so little pain in their lives. My adopted kids, I didn't understand the amount of pain they had been through, and we were overwhelmed, trying to figure out how do we do this really well? How do we care for them? How do we actually love these kids who have been through such hard things? And one of the things that we decided we were going to do was we were going to, at least early on, try to actually move to the area of Chicago that our adopted kids were from. So oftentimes in adoption, kids are adopted out of communities, and can be very good reasons for that. But again, for us, we felt early on that we were at least meant to do the opposite. And so we started to looking into moving to a neighborhood like Austin. But we wanted to do it well. We wanted to do it in a way that actually invested in the community, that served our neighbors, but also that served our kids, that cared for them really well, and that created a huge problem for us. Because like all parents, we want our kids to be at schools that care for them, that challenge them academically, and that prepare them for the future when they're safe. But often, because so few in our society take action steps to care about these neighborhoods, those schools are almost impossible to find in places like the west side of Chicago. And so like families like mine, when we move into these neighborhoods, what we end up doing is what a lot of people who were born and raised in these neighborhoods try to do. Try to get out somehow. Try to find schools outside the community and send them there. We try to commute out of the west side, out of Austin, away from these families and these kids to somewhere else. But shockingly, we found in the west side of Chicago, a place in the news because of violence and poverty, we found the best school I have ever seen. And one which is not merely filled with kids from wealthy families who can afford private school, but which is filled with the neighborhood itself. A place that's more diverse than my family, a place where my kids found a home, a place where my kids are growing academically alongside kids that our society would normally divide. A place where they're loved and where also they are learning how to love in a way that our world has no idea how to do. And that place is the Field School. And so it's one of my friends who was in the West Side before I ever got here. He put it like this years ago: this community is an anchor for our family. It helps us keep investing here. We wouldn't have stayed without the Field School. In fact, I would say for myself that I don't think we would be here. That's the impact the school is having. It's caring for the people there, and it's drawing others in. And so because of that, it's laying a foundation for how we actually love a city like Chicago. How can we see it changed? It's possible through places like the Field School. Now, of course, the Field School on its own can't bring about whole-scale change on the West Side, but in my family's life and the lives of many other families, I've seen how it lays that foundation for larger community renewal, and I would encourage you to participate in that as well. Thank you so much.